Hello viewers, welcome back to Bayt Al-Asad or House of the Lion. This is Frank Parent, and today I am here to have another discussion slash bit of a show and tell about an interesting little piece that I had made for me by a wonderful smith who caught wind of what we are doing here on the channel. He's from India. His name is Ankur, from a shop called Rare Collections, I believe it is. If that's wrong, I'll put it back down on the screen in a second. But he's a smith from India that makes a ton of reproduction arms and armor from various time periods from India. And I have an American contact who's also an armorer and a smith who got me hooked up with this guy and sent me a really fascinating piece that I am very, very honored to have received. I caught wind of the fact that I was doing a lot of research on Mughal Indian weapons and Katars, and I got sent this beast, this saw-toothed hooded Katar. This thing's a beast. And I am so happy to have one of these in my possession because it was not until I started researching Katars and other weapons from India that I realized the variety that Katars came in. And I know this is going to be kind of a never-ending process of figuring out how some of these are used, especially in the anti-armor function, which my last video on Katars, we saw that's what I was talking about. So first and foremost, saw-tooth blades in India are not uncommon. We see a bunch of them in both, we see a bunch of them in manuscripts, we see a bunch of them in illuminated illustrations, we see a bunch of them in miniatures, we see a ton surviving museum examples. A lot of them are swords. I'm going to go ahead and put some of those up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Right, so all those came in a variety of different shapes and takes on traditional existing Indian weapons. So it's no shock to me that someone or several people put saw teeth on Katars. Now, we have to remember my research so far with these has come from an anti-armor battlefield weapon standpoint. So we think of Katars normally, right, as weapons that have the ability to cut, but are really optimized for the thrust to get into gaps and armor. And a lot of the surviving examples of saw-tooth Katars, both in miniatures and museum pieces rather, do show that the tip is actually not that sharp, but the blade is serrated. So I'll go ahead and put these up on the screen too. So this begs the question, how is this used? Right, punching through armor, maybe not the best thing with it. Cutting at someone, cutting at the armor, different story. I theorize that these saw teeth were not intended necessarily to cut at flesh, right, being an armored weapon, but rather pull, push, and tear open chain. Yes, while some of them had more pronounced tips that you could thrust, a lot of them are a lot more round. So why not make use of these serrations? Let me show you an example. Here's my hula hood, right? And if you look at this, right, these saw teeth can fit very nicely in these rings and create a pulling motion, a snagging motion, right? You want to place it or strike, and you can pull your opponent into you, pulling them off guard, and maybe even getting another weapon in this hand into a gap in armor. Something else to think about is that a lot of later century works of Indian mail weren't riveted. They were actually budded. So how much easier would it be to put this onto a bunch of budded armor and just try to pull it open, therefore weakening your opponent's armor and creating an opening for another weapon or maybe a more pronounced end of the same Katar to get into the gaps of that armor. So I'm going to try to experiment with this going forward a little bit more. But as you know, right now in the early phases, all I have to go by are written examples and experimental archaeology, especially concerning an anti-armor function. So if you have any ideas on what else this could be used for or how it might be used, please feel free to put it down in the comments below, because this is going to do some damage. Whether or not you are really cutting away at flesh, you are pulling chain, opening a gap for another weapon's use. This thing's pretty nasty, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what exactly this can do in different situations. So one more big shout out to Encore for producing this. I'm looking forward to seeing more of his work in the future, and I'm looking forward to see what this thing can do in some tests coming up on our channel. So this has been Frank Perrin with By Al-Asad, House of the Lion. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and we will see you very, very soon. Thank you.